He had everything money could buy: cars, houses, companies, but he couldn't buy his son's voice. At just 3 years old, Liam was diagnosed as nonverbal on the autism spectrum. Doctors gave their best theories, specialists followed with programs, and therapists came with charts and deadlines. Still, silence, not a word, not a sound that meant something real. Every day after therapy, the boy and his father sat at the same booth in a quiet corner diner. He didn't go for the food. He went because it was one place Liam didn't cry. It was here they met her, a waitress named Anna. No PhD, no clipboard, no training in speech pathology, but she saw the boy. While the father scrolled through emails, Anna knelt down beside the child with crayons instead of cue cards, with songs instead of structured scripts. She didn't wait for permission, she followed instinct. She didn't ask what's wrong, she asked what colors do you like? And she waited, sometimes minutes, for a glance, a nod, a tap. That was enough for her to keep going. One day, the father looked up from his phone and froze. His son, who had never made a request, was pointing at Anna and trying to mouth the word red. The crayon in her hand matched the one Liam had drawn earlier. Tears welled in his eyes. This wasn't a therapist's milestone. This was a miracle born of patience and presence. The next week, the father returned, not with his usual silence, but with questions. He wanted to know what Anna had done differently. She smiled softly and said, "I just waited for him to tell me who he is, in his time, not ours." That single encounter sparked a wave of change. The father didn't just tip her generously. He offered her something bigger, a chance to lead a new foundation, one built not by experts in suits, but by humans who listen with their hearts. Anna would go on to train others, and the organization she helped build would support countless children and parents who'd lost hope. And Liam, he didn't just find his words, he found his voice. True connection often comes from the most unexpected places. This statement holds more power than most people realize. In a world obsessed with credentials, degrees, and status, we often forget that the most meaningful impact can come from individuals society overlooks. It's not always the person with the most letters after their name who changes a life. It could be the barista who remembers your name, the janitor who offers a kind smile, or in this story, the waitress who saw a silent child not as a problem to be fixed, but as a person to be understood. Genuine connection is rooted in presence. It requires no wealth, no prestige, just the willingness to see someone for who they are beyond their limitations. In our daily lives, we often walk past opportunities to connect. We label people by their roles: waiter, clerk, stranger, never realizing the power each one holds to shape a moment, a feeling, or even a life. And when someone steps into a child's world with no agenda other than kindness, the results can be astonishing. What professional therapists try to achieve through protocols and practice, Anna, the waitress, unlocked through intuition and love. Children, especially those with communication challenges, respond to authenticity. They are not fooled by forced enthusiasm or rigid expectations. What Anna gave Liam wasn't a lesson plan, it was emotional safety. She offered consistency, attention, and a level of human connection that surpassed textbook methods. She didn't try to fix him, she accepted him, and that acceptance was the bridge between silence and speech. There was no magic formula, only the power of showing up fully and without judgment. This teaches a critical lesson for educators, parents, therapists, and society at large. Never underestimate the influence of the seemingly ordinary. When people feel seen and safe, growth begins. Anna didn't wear a lab coat or carry diagnostic tools, but she carried something rarer: patience without pressure, engagement without expectation. Her actions reflect a deeper truth, that human beings thrive not under force but under understanding. In education and therapy, we talk about individualized education programs, EAPs, tailored learning, and inclusive environments. But what does inclusion really mean if it doesn't include the voices of everyday people who are close to these children in real ways? What if connection, true, deep, present connection, is more impactful than we realize, especially for children who experience the world differently? The story of Anna and Liam reminds us that sometimes what children need most isn't a system or a service, it's a person. A person who listens, a person who stays, a person who believes. It also invites us to reconsider our judgments. Would the millionaire father have ever imagined that someone earning minimum wage could unlock something that hundreds of dollars in therapy could not? This reversal is both humbling and enlightening. We often assign value based on income, job title, or education, but true value comes from influence, and influence comes from connection. True connection, especially when it is unexpected, changes lives because it bypasses the intellect and speaks directly to the heart. It isn't loud, it isn't boastful, it's found in the small moments, a shared smile, a gesture of patience, the quiet offering of time. These are the moments that shape children, especially those who struggle to connect through conventional means. In a world that rewards speed, Anna moved slowly. In a world that demands results, she offered presence. In a world that often isolates people with disabilities, she included Liam without making it a project. That kind of connection is powerful. It teaches us that love is not about grand gestures, it's about consistent, quiet acts of care. So, when we say true connection often comes from the most unexpected places, we must believe it and act on it. We must look around at the people in our lives and ask not what their credentials are, but how they make others feel. Because in the end, it's not always the trained professional or the wealthy benefactor who changes a life. It might just be the person who kneels down, waits, and listens. Empathy can be more powerful than education alone. While education equips us with strategies, theories, and knowledge, empathy allows us to apply those tools in a way that resonates with real human experiences. Education might teach us what autism is, or how to recognize signs of speech delay, but it is empathy that allows us to understand what a child is feeling when they cannot speak, how frustrated or isolated they might be, and what they might need from someone in that moment. In many professional settings, interactions with children who have special needs become overly clinical. Charts, goals, and assessments often take center stage, but a child is not a checklist. No two children are the same, and no diagnosis can fully capture their individual challenges, strengths, or desires. This is where empathy comes in as the silent, yet powerful, tool. It allows us to move beyond standard procedure and into the realm of personal connection. When someone like Anna interacts with a child like Liam, not from a place of authority, but from a place of compassion, something profound happens. She doesn't see a case. She sees a child with a soul, a personality, and a desire to connect. Empathy listens before it speaks. It observes patiently. It doesn't rush the process or demand results. This is crucial in working with nonverbal or neurodivergent children. These children often sense when they are being handled versus when they are being loved. Empathy creates emotional safety, and safety is the soil in which growth happens. Even the best educational methods fail when a child feels unseen or pressured. But empathy opens the door to trust, and trust is what allows true learning and communication to flourish. Empathy also bridges gaps between people of different worlds. In the story, Anna and the millionaire father come from entirely different socioeconomic backgrounds. He has power, wealth, and influence. She has none of those things on the surface, yet her ability to step into Liam's world and meet him there without an agenda becomes the very thing that changes everything. Empathy doesn't require similarity. It requires willingness. A willingness to feel what someone else might be feeling, to imagine their experience, and to respond with kindness and intention. Even in formal education and therapy, the best practitioners are those who combine knowledge with empathy. They know when to pause a lesson plan because a child is having an emotional moment. They know when to shift strategies not because the book says so, but because their heart tells them something different is needed. Anna may not have had training, but she had this wisdom. She noticed what made Liam respond. Noticing is a skill rooted in empathy. She noticed what colors he looked at, how long he hesitated before moving his hand, what made him anxious and what made him relax. These observations didn't come from a manual, they came from her heart. The power of empathy is also seen in its ripple effect. When the father saw how his son responded, it challenged his assumptions. He could have dismissed Anna, but instead her empathy inspired his own. He realized that sometimes love looks like quiet presence, not expensive programs. He saw that healing and progress come from connection, not just correction. This shift in his perspective led to the creation of a foundation that would go on to help countless other children. All of it began not with a training session, but with a single act of empathy, one human choosing to care deeply and sincerely. In a world that often praises intellect over intuition, we must remember that true transformation often begins in the heart. Knowledge gives us tools, but empathy tells us how and when to use them. It guides our actions with care and helps us adapt when logic alone falls short. Especially in education and caregiving, empathy must not be seen as a soft skill, it is an essential one. When we honor empathy as a form of intelligence, we allow people like Anna to become powerful agents of change. And more importantly, we create a world where children like Liam are not just supported, but deeply understood. Children learn through trust, not pressure. This truth lies at the very core of child development, especially for those who face unique communication or cognitive challenges. When we imagine learning, we often think of structure, instruction, and routine. These are all valuable tools, but without a foundation of emotional trust, they can quickly become barriers rather than bridges. Trust is not a bonus in a learning environment. It is the soil from which every meaningful breakthrough grows. When a child feels safe, they are more willing to take risks. Risk in the context of learning doesn't mean danger. It means vulnerability. For a nonverbal child like Liam, even attempting to form a sound or make a gesture requires courage. If that effort is met with impatience, correction, or pressure, the child withdraws. But if it is met with warmth, encouragement, and genuine attention, the child is more likely to try again. Over time, these small attempts add up to larger mental progress. Trust is the invisible thread that binds each of those moments together. In the story, Anna didn't demand anything from Liam. She didn't push him to speak, didn't set expectations, and never used forceful encouragement. Instead, she created an environment where he felt emotionally free to explore. This freedom didn't mean chaos, it meant security. Liam knew Anna wouldn't rush him or react with frustration. He learned subconsciously that her presence was safe. And from that safety, communication began to grow, not because she instructed him to, but because he trusted her enough to try. This kind of trust-based learning stands in contrast to much of what is found in high-pressure educational systems. Often, both parents and professionals feel the urgency to meet milestones, to see visible results. That urgency can lead to anxiety for the adults and the children. But children, especially those with sensory or developmental differences, don't thrive under stress. They shut down, they disengage, pressure creates resistance. Trust, however, invites curiosity and opens doors. Another aspect of trust in learning is the idea of presence without judgment. Anna never treated Liam like a problem to be solved. She approached him with curiosity, not criticism. She accepted him as he was. That acceptance is what began to build trust. Children can sense when they are being judged, even if nothing is said aloud. A raised eyebrow, an impatient sigh, or a disappointed tone can be enough to make a child retreat. On the other hand, genuine presence, being there fully and without hidden expectations, creates a bond that encourages exploration and self-expression. For children who are nonverbal or have delayed speech, the journey toward communication is often long and unpredictable. It is not linear. Some days bring progress, others feel like setbacks. In this uncertainty, trust acts as a stabilizing force. When a child knows that they are supported regardless of how fast they progress, they are more likely to keep going. That emotional stability is more valuable than any charted goal. Moreover, trust also involves allowing children to lead at times. Anna didn't dictate what Liam should focus on. she followed his cues. If he was drawn to a red crayon, she joined him in that moment. If he looked away, she waited. This is not passive teaching. It is responsive teaching. It is a recognition that children, even without words, communicate their readiness. And when adults respect those signals instead of overriding them, trust deepens. This approach is not just limited to children with special needs. All children benefit from relationships rooted in trust, but for those who struggle with speech or social interaction, it is especially critical. They often experience a world that misunderstands or misinterprets them. A consistent, caring adult can become a safe anchor, a person who doesn't just teach but truly connects. The story of Liam and Anna is a beautiful reminder that trust, not pressure, is the key to unlocking potential. It challenges us to slow down, to listen more deeply, and to create environments, whether in homes, classrooms, or clinics, where children feel seen, respected, and secure. Only then can real learning begin. Wealth cannot replace presence and genuine human interaction. This idea is often overlooked in a world where financial success is equated with capability, power, and solutions. When faced with problems, especially those involving a child's development, many turn first to professionals, technology, and high-end services. These things have their place. They can provide tools, resources, and pathways. But they cannot substitute the emotional bond formed through presence, consistent, heartfelt, and attentive human interaction. Money can buy access, but it cannot buy connection. In the story, the father had more than enough wealth to hire the best therapists, educators, and consultants. And he did. But despite all of it, his son remained silent. Not because the professionals weren't competent, but because something essential was missing: emotional connection. That connection didn't come from a structured plan or an expensive tool. It came from Anna, a waitress with no credentials, but with the willingness to see, listen, and be with the child. Her presence wasn't transactional. It was genuine, and that made all the difference. This contrast reveals a deeper truth about human development, especially in children. Presence is what grounds a child. It tells them, you matter right now, you are enough as you are, I'm here with you. No gadget, app, or therapy schedule can communicate that message more effectively than the sincere presence of a person who cares. Children are incredibly intuitive. They can sense when someone is physically present but emotionally distant. They also notice when someone is fully engaged, listening with their eyes, and responding to their cues. We live in a time when even parents with the best intentions are often pulled away by responsibilities, work, or digital distractions. The temptation is to outsource care or supplement absence with material gifts or advanced solutions. But children, especially those with developmental delays, don't respond to things. They respond to people, and not just any people, but people who are truly invested in them. The child in the story didn't respond to wealth or strategy. He responded to presence, that simple act of kneeling beside him, coloring without expectation, humming softly while he observed. Those were the moments that built trust and connection. Presence is also about patience. It's about being willing to wait in silence if needed, to follow the child's pace, to allow space for response without forcing it. Anna didn't rush. She didn't interrupt the child's process. That kind of emotional availability can't be bought. It has to be given. It comes from a heart willing to pause, to let go of control, and to simply be there. The father's awakening was not just about what Anna gave to his son, but what he himself had missed. His wealth allowed him to do everything, except slow down. Watching Anna interact with Liam forced him to see that love is not measured by how much we provide, but by how deeply we connect. It's a humbling realization, especially for someone used to solving problems with money. Real change didn't begin when he hired more help. It began when he witnessed true presence in action. This principle has wider implications. In schools, hospitals, and homes, the emphasis on performance, productivity, and measurable outcomes often overshadows the importance of simple human interaction. But it is in those interactions where the most important learning happens. A child may not remember every lesson or tool, but they will remember who made them feel seen and safe. Presence doesn't require wealth. In fact, sometimes wealth creates a barrier, a false belief that love can be outsourced or supplemented. But presence requires something more valuable: time, attention, and heart. When given freely, it can open doors that no amount of money can unlock. In the end, the father learned that the greatest gift he could give his son was not found in therapy centers or prestigious schools. It was found in a small diner, in the quiet companionship of a woman who had nothing to offer except her presence. And in that, she offered everything. Change begins when someone decides to believe in potential. Belief is not a passive emotion. It's an active force. It shapes how we see others, how we respond to challenges, and how we engage with possibility, especially in the face of limitations. When someone believes in another person's potential, especially when others have stopped trying or assumed the worst, it creates a ripple effect. That belief becomes the foundation upon which growth is built. For a child who cannot speak, or who struggles to connect with the world around them, being believed in can be more empowering than any method or technique. In the story, Liam's silence led many professionals to define him by what he lacked. Labels were attached to him, expectations were lowered, therapy goals were set based on what he wasn't doing, and in many ways, he was treated as a puzzle to be solved rather than a person to be discovered. But when Anna, the waitress, saw him, she didn't look at him with pity or clinical detachment. She saw him as someone with inner life and untapped possibility. She saw potential, not because of what he could already do, but because she chose to believe that there was more inside him waiting to come out. That single decision to believe in a child sparked a transformation. Belief doesn't require proof, it requires trust. It's easy to believe in someone after they've shown progress. It's harder and far more meaningful to believe in them when they show none. Anna didn't wait for signs before offering her heart. Her belief was unconditional. She gave her time, attention, and patience, trusting that something beautiful could grow, even if it took weeks or months to appear. Children, especially those with developmental differences, are sensitive to the energy around them. When adults believe in them, they feel it. They begin to mirror that faith, slowly learning to believe in themselves. But when they are surrounded by doubt or low expectations, they shrink. They stop trying. They internalize the belief that they are less than. That's why belief is not just encouragement. It is a form of emotional education. It teaches a child that they are worth the effort, worth the wait, and capable of surprising everyone, including themselves. The father in the story had every resource, but had lost the belief that his son could change. Not out of neglect, but out of exhaustion. Hope fades when results don't come, and the pressure of trying everything and seeing no progress can wear down even the most loving parent. But seeing Anna interact with his son reawakened something in him. It reminded him that potential is not measured by results alone, it's measured by resilience and the decision to keep showing up. Her belief in Liam revived his own. This renewal of belief didn't stop with the father. Inspired by Anna, he decided to fund and build a foundation that centered around one core philosophy. Every child has potential, even if it doesn't show up in expected ways. This belief-based model emphasized presence, patience, and personalized care. It empowered caregivers and educators to look beyond diagnosis and into the humanity of each child. And it all started with one person who refused to see a silent boy as broken, but instead saw a child waiting to be understood. When we believe in someone's potential, we offer them a mirror of hope. We give them permission to grow at their own pace. That belief can become the turning point in a life story, not because it solves everything immediately, but because it shifts the environment from one of limitation to one of possibility. In the end, the greatest changes often begin not with action, but with a choice to believe in what cannot yet be seen. Inclusion is not just a policy, it's a practice of the heart. It goes beyond the written mission statements in schools or the structured integration in classrooms. True inclusion begins when a person sees another not for their differences, but for their humanity. It happens in quiet gestures, in the decisions we make to reach out, to stay present, to connect. For children with disabilities or developmental delays, inclusion isn't just about physical presence in shared spaces. It's about emotional invitation. It's about belonging. And belonging begins when someone makes room for you, not because they have to, but because they want to. Anna, the waitress in the story, never received training in inclusion. She wasn't told how to accommodate a child with special needs. She wasn't given instructions, guidelines, or a checklist, but she practiced inclusion in its purest form, through kindness, patience, and attention. She didn't see Liam as other. She didn't see him as less capable or less worthy of her time. She saw a child sitting alone and made a choice to include him in her world, even in the smallest of ways, by coloring with him, by acknowledging him with warmth, by letting him take the lead. This kind of inclusion is transformative. It sends a powerful message. You matter. You are not invisible. You are welcome here. For a nonverbal child who may often feel misunderstood or excluded even in environments that claim to be inclusive, such authentic gestures can be life-changing. They don't require elaborate accommodations. They require awareness, empathy, and the willingness to bridge the gap between difference and connection. The truth is, inclusion cannot be effective when it's only theoretical. It must be lived. It must be present in how we speak, how we listen, how we wait. Anna didn't ask whether Liam was ready to interact. She simply showed up and remained open. She adjusted her approach, not based on what was convenient, but based on what made Liam feel safe. That's real inclusion, flexible, responsive, and rooted in dignity. Often, our society equates inclusion with placement, putting children with disabilities in the same room as their typically developing peers. But inclusion without connection is still isolation. A child sitting in a classroom where no one speaks to them, includes them in conversation, or adapts to their needs is not truly included. What Anna modeled is the missing piece in so many formal systems: relational inclusion. She entered Liam's world and allowed herself to be taught by his cues. That kind of humility and receptivity cannot be legislated. It must be cultivated. Inclusion also means changing how we view ability. Instead of measuring children by what they lack, we begin to focus on what they can offer when given the right environment. Liam was silent, but he was observant, curious, and capable of forming bonds. Anna saw that, and because she believed in his capacity to connect, he began to respond. Inclusion, then, is not just about helping someone fit into our world. It's also about making room for their way of being and honoring it as valuable. The father's journey reflects this realization as well. Initially, his focus was on solutions that would bring his son closer to a norm. But watching Anna interact with Liam taught him that inclusion isn't about assimilation. It's about acceptance. It's about recognizing that the world becomes richer when we allow for different ways of communicating, learning, and expressing. Eventually, the foundation he built prioritized inclusive spaces where children like Liam were not just present but fully engaged, where their unique needs were met not with tolerance but with welcome. It encouraged not just access but participation, not just support but celebration. Inclusion is not about charity. It's not about doing something for someone. It's about doing something with them, walking beside them, valuing their input, and creating a space where everyone feels they truly belong. And it starts not with systems, but with people, with individuals like Anna who choose, moment by moment, to make the invisible visible and the unheard deeply heard.